But when you actually slow down and read the book of Judges carefully, something feels slightly uneven beneath the surface. Because strangely enough, the text never really repeats the idea that Samson's power lived in his hair. What it does repeat, again and again, is something else entirely. And once you notice it, the whole story starts to shift. Samson has almost become a cartoon figure in modern memory. The strongest man in the Bible, long hair, a secret weakness, a tragic romance. But Judges isn't really interested in a superhero story. It's asking something far more uncomfortable. What happens when a person slowly drifts away from what once set him apart? And maybe even more unsettling, how long can someone keep functioning before realizing something essential has already begun to leave? The story actually begins before Samson is even born. Israel has been under Philistine oppression for 40 years. 40 years isn't just background detail. That's a whole generation growing up inside fear. And into that silence, a woman who cannot have children receives a visitor. The angel of Yahweh appears and tells her he will have a son. But before describing what he will do, the instructions come first. No wine, no strong drink, nothing unclean. Then comes the line everyone remembers. No razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazirite to God from the womb.
Now, most readers immediately lock onto the hair, but the emphasis in the text is somewhere else. Nazirite. The Hebrew word is nazir, meaning to dedicate, to consecrate, to set apart. A Nazirite wasn't just someone with long hair. It was a visible life of separation and covenant devotion to Yahweh. And in Numbers chapter 6, that vow includes 3 conditions: no wine, no contact with the dead, no razor on the head. Now pause here for a moment, because this creates a problem for the common reading of Samson's story. If supernatural strength literally lived in his hair, why include the other 2 conditions at all? Why would touching a corpse matter? Why would wine matter? Those rules start to feel meaningless if the power is physically stored in hair, unless the hair was never the source. Now most readers immediately lock onto the hair, but early on, the text begins repeating something like a rhythm underneath the story. Judges 13:25. The Ruach of Yahweh began to stir him. That word stir feels like something awakening under the surface. Then later, the language suddenly intensifies. The Ruach of Yahweh rushed upon him. Samson tears apart a lion, bare hands. Then again in Ashkelon, the Ruach of Yahweh rushed upon him. Again when he's handed over, the Ruach of Yahweh rushed upon him. It keeps repeating. Not his strength, not his body, not his hair. The Ruach of Yahweh. Now once you notice that repetition, it becomes hard to ignore, because the story keeps pulling attention away from Samson himself. The source is always external, given, bestowed, not owned. But then the cracks begin to show. And this is where Judges becomes psychologically sharp. Samson doesn't fall at once. He erodes, slowly, almost casually. After killing the lion, he later finds honey inside its carcass. And he takes it. According to the vow, contact with the dead was forbidden. But the story doesn't stop to announce a judgment. It just continues. Then he attends a feast. The word mishteh appears, often linked to drinking feasts. Another quiet breach. And still, the ruach comes upon him. He still wins, still fights, still moves in power. This creates tension. Outwardly, nothing seems broken. Inwardly, everything is slowly loosening. Then Delilah enters. The tone changes immediately. Tell me where your great strength comes from. First answer, fresh bowstrings. Second, new ropes. Third, weaving his hair. Each answer moves closer to truth, like he's already stepping towards surrender before he speaks it fully, one layer at a time. Eventually, the text says his soul was vexed to death. That's not playful anymore. That's pressure, exhaustion, collapse through repetition. And finally, he tells her everything. I have been a Nazirite to God from my mother's womb. If my head is shaved, my strength will leave me. Then she cuts his hair while he sleeps. And then comes one of the most chilling lines in the Bible. He did not know that Yahweh had left him. Not his secret was gone, not his strength was gone, but Yahweh had left. That changes everything, because the issue was never mechanical. It was relational. The hair was only a sign of something deeper, a covenant reality collapsing long before the scissors arrived. Samson is captured. His eyes are gouged out. He's reduced to grinding grain in prison, blind, humiliated, bound. And yet the tragedy feels deeper than physical defeat, because his blindness outside mirrors what had already been happening inside. Then one quiet line appears, almost unnoticed. The hair of his head began to grow again. At first it sounds symbolic, but the text still doesn't say strength is in the hair. Something else is happening. For the first time, Samson truly prays. Not casually, not confidently, desperately. The Philistines gather, a temple filled with people, and Samson stands between the pillars, blind. O Lord Yahweh, remember me. No performance, no riddles, no control, just dependence. Please strengthen me only this once. And Yahweh answers. The pillars fall. The temple collapses. More die in his death than in his life. Step back. Every time strength appeared in the story, the explanation never changed. The Ruach of Yahweh rushed upon him. Not hair, not muscle, not identity. The Ruach. The hair was never the source. It was the sign. And when the covenant finally broke completely, Yahweh departed. That's why the line hits so hard. He did not know that Yahweh had left him. The tragedy is not about hair. It's about separation. And yet, the ending is strangely heavy with meaning. Because Samson's final moment of strength doesn't come from confidence. It comes from surrender, prayer. Centuries later, in Hebrews chapter 11, his name appears. Among Gideon, David, Samuel, Samson. That feels uncomfortable, because he wasn't a moral hero. He was fractured, impatient, compromised. But maybe that's exactly the point. His story isn't about perfection. It's about dependence rediscovered at the very end. His strength was never something he owned. It was always received, gifted, held by God. By the end, Samson has lost sight, freedom, and strength. But the story suggests something more subtle. He may have been losing them long before the Philistines ever touched him. one compromise at a time, quiet, invisible. And in the darkness between those pillars, he finally understood where it all came from. Not the hair, not himself. The one who had been there all along.